need to hold it a little closer to your mouth.
I'd like to introduce Lester O'Brien. She's Lester. Marianne Holm, I think you all know, who's been fighting for this. And not giving up for years. And Debi Zimmermann, thank you. So,
Behind you? Yeah. Sorry.
oh, and there is Dr. Bob Jacobs.
Yay.
So, thank you for watching this film. I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to make it. And it wasn't easy to know that this continues. Is anyone, just for my own curiosity, anybody from the town council here tonight or the zoo? No?
You're funny.
Okay, so questions, comments?
So
Come on,
I guess
guys.
I'd like to say, where do we stand today with Lucy?
Sadly, we stand pretty much in the same place we've been standing for years. The plus side is we now have the experts from outside of the zoo industry that have spoken up and said that Lucy needs to be moved. When Free the Wild commissioned the experts and paid for them to come, 2 out of the 3 reports that were created from those assessments did say that Lucy should go to sanctuary, that she needed sanctuary, and it could allow her up to a decade more of life. Unfortunately though, something changed along the way, and Free the Wild decided that it should be a unanimous decision. So the German vet had decided that he would side with the zoo and say that Lucy wouldn't survive transport. I want to mention the background of the German vet. He is a reproductive specialist, and he goes around from zoo to zoo to zoo inseminating elephants. And at the Oregon Zoo, there was an elephant there who was inseminated over 100 times. It's a cruel and brutal procedure, and luckily, she never actually became pregnant, but what happens is these elephants are born into zoos, and many of them, almost half of them, don't survive to even see double digits in age because they catch a disease called EEHV, which is a herpes virus, and it is a hemorrhagic disease, and it's a painful, agonizing death for captive elephants. There are some elephants in the wild that get this disease, but very few compared to captive elephants. So even if these inseminators are successful in producing a baby that isn't stillborn, it has a very good chance of catching EEHV and dying. And so these female elephants that give birth not only go through the horrible procedures of insemination, but they watch their babies die, and then only to be inseminated again to watch another baby die. So it's heartbreaking. So this is the background of the one vet that said Lucy should remain. And interestingly, after Lucy didn't go and Free the Wild didn't push the issue to have Lucy moved, who does the Valley Zoo bring back to follow up with their examination? Dr. Goritz, the inseminator from Germany. So as you saw in the film, there was Dr. Oosterhuis. He had been examining Lucy for 17 years, always saying that she would never survive being moved. Then he retired, and we were so happy. And then suddenly they were gifted Dr. Goritz. So now they have a new vet that will say what they want them to say. So we struggle. We need more support. What we mostly need, more than anything, is Edmontonians contacting their city councillor. I can't get them to talk to me. My city councillor, yes, and he's been helpful. He actually helped facilitate the assessments that happened, because the initial reaction was to say no to Free the Wild. But one city councillor, possibly two that we have on board right now, isn't gonna do it. So we need all of you that live in the city of Edmonton to reach out to your councillors and to Mayor Sohi. And if you have any connections with any of them, or as someone mentioned, Connor McDavid from the Oilers, or anyone affluent in the community, that's what we need at this point. Because my group, as hard as we've tried, I'd love to say we were making progress, but it really feels discouraging. One thing I do know though, is Lucy is well known worldwide. I've traveled a lot and visited a lot of different countries with elephants. And when I mention Lucy, they all seem to know about her. So Lucy is well known and has the support of the world. Sadly, she doesn't have enough support from the people here in Edmonton.
Where I work at, Armagee, our mayor, came to donate, and I wasn't allowed. I work at Canadian Wild Services, so he
Right.
came to donate to show that that's what he does.
Right?
I wasn't allowed to interview him.
Darn.
But you know, sorry, but it's really up to you. It's really up to the people. I mean, I feel it's really up to all of Canada, but she lives here in Edmonton, and it's really up to you to get active. I mean, I'm very grateful that you came because you cared enough to want to see the truth. But it's really up to you to demand that Lucy go to sanctuary. And as the film very clearly points out, every single expert, so-called expert that they brought in until Free the Wild, were all connected to zoos and circuses. So she never, up until Free the Wild came, had an objective, honest vet to examine her. And she's, as far as I'm, well, no, she's a prisoner here. She's been deprived of everything, and she's a prisoner here. And it's up to you, to fight for her freedom.
I'm confused as to why Free the Wild changed their mind. It's almost like the Jane Goodall thing, like the zoo just has too much control over her. But I mean, it seemed to me that she was not as affiliated with the zoo, that she was more a sanctuary rescue. So that really surprised me. And I feel just took a turn for the worse for Lucy. She was supposed to be one of the experts that was supposed to be on the side.
Yeah, it's true. I think Free the Wild naively thought that they could work with the zoo, which is what they did when they rescued Kavan, that they could work with the zoo, together with the zoo, and that they would get a consensus for Lucy to go to sanctuary. But as Marianne pointed out, they were never going to let her go.
I tried really hard to encourage Free the Wild to bypass the zoo and go directly to city council, because they were at least open enough to allow the outside experts in. And I thought our chances were better going through them than going through the zoo director. But they didn't listen, and they wanted to form a relationship with Gary Dewar, and it was the most disappointing thing of all, next to what happened with Jane Goodall.
It was almost like she was worried about getting some kind of badness put on her or Free the Wild. Maybe that because maybe she felt like she wasn't getting the support from the city, we're not going to be getting it. But I feel like part of it is now where we are now in the culture province, and we're still a little bit old-fashioned in our views of animals. We do have a lot of diversity coming into this province, which really, really helps. We have a lot more animal lovers and people like that that are associated with so much agriculture and the farming part of our province. But I feel that also is a little bit setback, is where Lucy is located.
Yeah, I agree. And we face those setbacks when we do public awareness events. People think zoos are good. People think zoos educate the public. They make people care about animals. And, as mentioned in the film, that elephants in zoos are ambassadors for their wild counterparts. And it's just nonsense, because you look at an elephant in a zoo and you're not seeing an elephant, you're seeing the shell of an elephant and not the true elephant that they could be.
I think people are in denial when they go to a zoo, because even as a child I could see an animal in a cell unhappy. How could you not see that? So I think they don't want to see that.
That's exactly it. People see what they want to see.
And we're doing a disservice to our children. We're doing a huge disservice. I mean, you know, my husband and we took our kids to zoos, we went elephant riding, we went dolphin swimming, and I live with a lot of shame with that, because I should have known better. And, you know, and really I wanted my own entertainment. And, you know, what was I teaching them, or what was I doing? I wasn't thinking about them and their welfare and what was right for them. And I bought into it. I bought into what the zoo was telling me. And after doing this documentary, and I know I thought the focus was on elephants, but the focus is on all these animals. They don't belong in zoos, period. They belong where they belong, for their sake, for the sake of the ecosystem, the sake for the planet, and for the sake of us as well. So we've been all sold a bill of goods. And what Argentina is doing is brilliant. And that's what zoos can transition to if they care enough. And, you know, money talks.
Any chance you can get a clip on like global news or something that like where Edmontonians can see it? Because you mentioned it's on GEM or something.
It's going to be on
People watch
CBC.
GEM.
It's going to be on CBC documentary channel.
It's actually sponsored for,
Shay,
Sorry, it's going to be on CBC documentary channel April the 6th at 9 o'clock, and then I believe GEM the next day.
Will it ever make it to Netflix?
Arnie, I need you. Arnie is my producer, my husband and my producer. Arnie, you come up because you need to answer this question.
In terms of the film being seen outside of Canada, obviously tonight is the world premiere, so thank you all for coming. But we're hoping after the Canadian run, it opens in Toronto Friday for a week. Our plans are to submit it at film festivals, and that's usually the beginning of international interest in a documentary. So no news yet in terms of Netflix, but that's definitely the plan, to get it out into a global streaming. Yeah. And in terms of global news, we tried to get local Edmonton press to come tonight, and we were turned down by all the local press to interview Fern or to come tonight to the screening. So it's interesting, somebody said that Global is a sponsor of the Edmonton Valley Zoo.
Shay Gannam, one of their main commentators, sits on the board for the zoo, and Global News is a corporate sponsor, so they give money to the zoo every year.
Is there a chance to run it during the Fringe?
The Fringe Festival.
Fringe
That's a theater, it's not film, so you have to do the Edmonton International Film Festival.
Yes, right there. Yeah, right there. Sorry, can you stand up because it's hard to.
We were talking about taking the kids and doing that. I did the same, but when you know better, you do better, right?
Yeah.
And what about if we go start with the kids? Why don't we go to the schools and get the kids knowing about all this? Get the kids out. And, because, I don't know, like,
Well, what we did when we made, this is my second documentary on animals. The first documentary I did was on the sled dog industry, exposing cruelty of the commercial sled dog industry, which is also horrific. Abuse to our four-legged best friends. So after that, I found out the schools that took their students dog sledding, and I went to the schools and showed them the film, and that ended that. So, you know, if you know that schools do take their kids to their students to the zoo, I'm happy to give them the film and show the principal and the staff, so it'll give them the information that they need, so they stop doing that.
we'll go home and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. Again, if you know schools that take their kids to zoos, go and talk to them.
They all do though.
We did reach out. We got the email contacts for 315 school trustees, principals, and vice principals. Sent them email and some convincing photographs and backstory of Lucy, asking and begging them not to take the kids to the zoo, and also bringing out safety, because when Lucy's walking around the park, They carry bull hooks. The keepers on either side of her have a bull hook. But if Lucy got spooked, a thunder or a loud noise, that bull hook isn't going to stop her. And many people have been killed from rampaging elephants. So it's a safety risk. Having Lucy, you know, people like to see her out roaming around, but it's a true risk to the staff. And I've seen kids in strollers 10 feet away from Lucy that could easily be stomped on or trampled on. So we tried to come at it from a safety perspective. We got one person that responded back out of those 300, and I spoke to her, and she was in tears by the time I finished talking to her, and said she would reach out to her counterparts, and then ghosted me after that.
I'm gonna I just want to ask Bob, Dr. Jacobs a question before we take more. I do want to tell you something though that's really important. The Liberal government has put forth Bill S-15, which means that will end elephants and great apes in zoos. We will be, if this passes, we will be the first country in the world to end elephant and great ape captivity. The Conservative Party is against it. So if they get in federally, that's it for the bill. If the Liberals get in, it will pass. And we are one of 5 countries in the world, 5 countries in the world that passed the Free Willy Act. Again, the Liberal government, I'm usually not political, but I am in this one, 5 countries in the world through the Free Willy Act that ended whales and dolphins in captivity. Only 5, and we're one of them. I just want to ask Bob, what's happening in the States in terms of zoos and elephants? Is there any movement there at all?
Can everybody hear me, first of all? If you can't, raise your hand.
Can you hear Bob?
Okay.
Yeah.
Fern, your microphone is breaking up. I can only hear every other word or so. The other microphone seems to be working. And what I heard you ask is what's happening in the United States. Well, first, let me just say I stand with Canada. I apologize for the stupidity of the American government. Second, I do not think elephants should be in zoos. Third, as far as I know, in the United States, there is very little happening with regards to zoos right now in terms of legislation. There are some small pockets where things are happening, but right now I think there are much bigger problems on everybody's minds.
But the Non-Human Rights Project is not giving up. You know, the Non-Human Rights Project is going through legal means, as you saw in the film, and going to court to ask the court to send these elephants to sanctuary. And even though they've lost some of the cases, they're going to keep going. And the more they keep going, the more the media covers what they're doing, and the more information and education is coming out there. But there's also one, I want to give it also to Lester, because obviously there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have worked in zoos and saw what Lester saw and did what he did. And if it wasn't for Lester and the few other people that were willing to be in this film, like Scott, I wouldn't have had the stories to tell. So Lester was there, he saw what he experienced what he did and had the courage to come forward and be part of this film.
Lucy had people, ex-workers from the zoo that would come up and stand up, because I've heard a story from that she lashing out at her caretakers, and maybe people would listen more. But no one's willing to step up.
Well, first, thank you. Thank you everybody for coming, and thank you for everybody for not turning away, because it's very easy to do. So thank you to Fern and Arnie for making a very difficult film. I know how hard it is to do it, so I appreciate that. Your question is a complex one, but a lot of people are afraid to come forward. One, A lot of people still believe in what they do within the zoo industry, right? And it's hard to come forward. You become a target real quick by a group of people who always seem to move around with groupies. It's kind of a weird phenomena, but if you work around exotic animals, you seem to have these groupies that are following you, and we typically get paid. The currency we usually get for doing what we do are death threats and people hacking your bank accounts and hacking your websites or anything like that. They go on slander campaigns, they try to discredit you, they bully you, so it's hard. It's really, really hard, right? The other problem is it's very hard to face your demons. So I don't feel very deserving of your applause, although I love you and I appreciate it, but at the end of the day, it's hard. I was the enemy for a long time. I caused a lot of harm. And so you never really come back from it. It's kind of a Rubicon. Once you cross it, you don't really come back from it. So I understand the fear that comes from a lot of these people. I do work with some zoo people who know that they should be an endangered species, so to speak. They know that the end game should be that they never do this. Unfortunately, that's not the norm. So there's a lot of conflict there. I totally understand it, but if anybody else has a comment, please.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Very brave, very courageous.
Thank you very much.
And you know what? I really do believe that not many people have enough balls to say what's right. They want to be, like you say, a groupie, right? They want to be with the in-crowd.
Okay.
They have been brought up to believe that this is real. It's ingrained in their brain. And so they do not want to take a look the other way and take a look and feel, now how would I be treated? How would I like to be treated if I was that elephant? Be alone, have no family, etc.
I appreciate
Not
that.
only that species, like everyone.
Yeah, elephants don't have the monopoly on captive sorrow, I can promise you that.
And the other thing is too, this so-called vet from Germany, he's supposed to be intelligent. Everybody looks up to him. Now is that really intelligence? Or is that, it's the almighty dollar, isn't it?
At the end of the day, it's a money business, no matter how you cut it. At the end of the day, but it's very reminiscent to me of the old tobacco industry. If anybody can remember the days when they had all these doctors that came forward and said, smoking's not bad for you, it's great, and there's no harm to it, whatever. But who's on the payroll, right? The work.
I smoked till he was 94.
Huh?
And
Right?
he lived, but he wasn't smoking the shit
Yeah.
that they put in it the
Yeah.
last 40 years.
You know, the life spirit is a weird thing, you know, but one of the work that Dr. Jacobs does, the work that these people do, that's not a for-profit work that we do, right?
No, absolutely not. I can see these ladies' hearts. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
But I haven't done what they have done.
But when you have vets that come in or these experts that are within the zoo industry, you're already working with a loaded deck, right? You're working,
Supposedly experts,
right?
And that's what
You're.
they're fighting.
The other problem is we have to understand that we have different niches for some of these. Vets are only just one of many different sciences. Dr. Jacobs' work here with the neurosciences, right? Like a lot of what his discoveries are really started in the 60s, yet, you know, they seem to be this newfound, you know, dark arts of some sort for the zoo world. And they don't have the same evidence that Dr. Jacobs has produced for brain work and what captivity does to the brain. Right? You're right, they have a limbic system. That means they feel emotions, memory, and stimulus, right? The same things that we do, right? But we've seemed to ignore that. If the price is right, I suppose.
Anyways, let's pass this on to, I just want to say one more thing and then I'm handing it to Debbie. There is hope, everybody. When I talk to kids today, they get it the way we never did. So they refuse to go to zoos, many of the kids that I talk to, and then again, with the new legislation, hopefully will pass in Parliament, that will be a game changer. And hopefully other countries will model what Canada is doing.
Not sure if there's a specific question, but I'd be happy to take some. As far as professionals reversing gears, I personally did that myself in 2018. I was following along with the conventional veterinary model, and I found I was doing a lot more harm. And when my mandate was to first do no harm, but there were so many ways we were harming animals, from vaccinations that last forever, but the vets need to get the people in for their annual vaccines every 1 to 3 years because that's a cash cow for them, and they won't admit it. And for 20 years now, sorry I've changed the subject, but it's kind of along the same thing, but for 20 years we've known now that spaying and neutering and ripping out organs that have functions other than just reproduction, that Dr. Bob Jacobs probably knows about, all the effects of estrogen and testosterone on the brain. We've really destroyed a lot of lives of our animals by assuming the old science was real. So they have one study from the 60s, they all run with it, and they chop everybody's gonads out as if they're spare parts, and then it turns out that they're doing a lot of harm that way. But 20 years later, rarely is there a vet looking the other way. And the problem is, like Lester was saying, it's hard to look at yourself and say, I've been harming animals for 2 decades, 3 decades. It's hard to live with yourself like that. But if you're brave enough, and I was fired for looking at it a different way and doing it with fresh whole food and less chemicals, more natural ways, living in harmony with nature. But it's a hard road, and even when I was writing against the procedures they were doing with Lucy, Dr. Ness at the time, he called me up and said, he was reprimanding me, and then he got the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association involved, and they were going to haul me in for that too. And I said, well, you have to do that legally, because I'm not just going to come and meet with you and get lambasted for talking against your standard way of doing things, which I find is totally disturbing. Anyway, it's a big risk to turn the other way. My advice would be to look at everything with fresh eyes. Everything you've ever been told about health, medicine, animals, captive or domestic, there's another side to it that doesn't make the money, but it makes a whole lot of sense, if that makes any sense. Something else you can do with people that you meet, you can mention that elephants are much like us. They can feel empathy, they can mourn, they feel all the full range of emotions. They're socially complex, but they also mature just like we do. They reach puberty at around 11 to 14 years, and they can live up to 80. So when you see a baby elephant being tortured, it's like, would you do that to your 3-year-old? Would you, take a bullhook to your 3-year-old? Would you do any of those things? And just relate it to, would you do that to a human every time you see someone abusing an animal? Because they feel and think, and yeah, they're so much like us. We just take them for granted. As Lester was saying in the movie, you see them on the outside, but you don't see the sentient being on the inside. There's a soul in there. I have never seen Lucy's eyes. I painted Lucy, and I had to make it pretty black in that area because I've never seen it, because she's not in there. Like, she is checked out. It is brutal from the moment she was captured, the brutality of how they capture the babies, and the brutality of free contact. It's horrific, and for any being to survive that is a wonderment to me. But you're not seeing an elephant, you're seeing a shell, you're seeing an automatron, and that personality cannot come through until they're in amongst their natural environment with their own species, and they've got the autonomy to make their own decisions. Because right now, every waking moment of Lucy's life is highly managed. She cannot make any decisions. She can't even defecate and urinate where she wants. She has to do it in a gutter on their command. So there's nothing in her life that is her own choice.
I just want to add to what Debbie said about elephants are similar to us in lifespan, and maturity. And you will hear the Valley Zoo refer to Lucy as a geriatric elephant, and that's just simply not true. She's a middle-aged elephant. So if I wish I was Lucy's age of 50. If I was, I would be pretty offended if someone referred to me as geriatric. Elephants in the wild, and I've personally seen one that was 96 years old at the sanctuary that I volunteer at in Thailand. They can live to be as old as humans, but in zoos, the average life expectancy is mid-40s. So I will say that I'm actually surprised that Lucy is still here, but she isn't long for this world, especially if she remains where she is now. So when you hear someone refer to her as old, correct them. And people believe it too because she looks old. You saw her videos of her walking. She walks like she's a 90-year-old elephant, but that's just because of the condition she's kept in.
It's a,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's a,
Question regarding Lucy's enclosure. With like all of the backlash that the zoo has received over the years and the amount of people who have offered to get her sanctuary or offered donations to improve her living situations, why do we think that the zoo has held back on that?
Waiting for her to die.
she's property.
Yeah, they've had money, they've had offers of donations. They don't want to spend money to upgrade her habitat because, like I thought, I believe they believe too, that Lucy isn't going to be around for long. So why would we build her a hydrotherapy pool that they've been saying they're going to do for the last 5 years but never do it? After those assessments from Free the Wild, they said they would make her a larger indoor and outdoor enclosure. We also found out that the air filtration system in her barn is malfunctioning and she's actually breathing in contaminants. That was discovered in the fall of 2022. And the last I checked, about a month ago with the zoo director, she still doesn't have a new air filtration system. So they use Lucy's breathing problem as an excuse as to why she would die if transported, but they are the reason that she has a breathing problem. And the climate in Canada is not appropriate either. So combining those things, but they are the masters at stalling and double talk, and they keep telling me, oh, the HVAC system is coming. I check in 2 months later. Oh, well, we needed to do some more environmental analysis. 3 months later, oh, we're just checking out the ventilation holes and getting those ready. And it was something for 3 years, there's been an excuse. And as far as the pool goes, then they tried to say that Lucy had places to swim outside of the public areas, but it wasn't true either.
10 minutes? Okay, let's take some questions. Sorry, right there. Right there, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, for this work. And I have a few things. You know, my daughter is a veterinarian specialist, and so is her partner. And you know, they really feel that they're doing the right thing with animals, right? Just as many doctors that are trained with humans, because they've taken all of the knowledge out of the curriculum. So they're all kind of pharmacologists, basically, right across the board. And you know, we become very desensitized very young. So I guess a couple things I'd like to say is, how are we educating the veterinarians? How are we educating them, and what are we doing to reach out to them? And the other thing...
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt because it's an excellent question, but I really want to keep this focused on the elephants, because we only have a few more minutes left.
And I
maybe you
just
can
one
talk
more
to Debbie
thing.
about that.
Sure, I would
after.
love that. And then one more thing.
Yeah.
I would love to show my granddaughter this, because we're having a lot of conversations around it, and she's 6. So would there maybe be a edited version that we could show younger children at some point?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no.
Okay.
No, we have a budget. I mean, Arnie, you're better to say that.
No, actually, I think that's an excellent
I do
idea,
too.
and I think we should cut down this film and model it in a way that it can be easily
Yes.
distributed amongst children, whether it's the school system or in other ways. I think that's a really good suggestion.
I have an organization called the Million Vegan Grandmothers, and we have a lot of children. And I couldn't quantify it. My daughter would not give me permission to show this to my granddaughter, but if it was done in a way that we could show it to children where they get the message without being traumatized, I think that would be such a good deal, because it's the children we want to reach. right
Yes,
now
that's
as
true.
well.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because it is the children and the parents that we want to reach.
Yeah, thank you.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I know we have a few more minutes.
Here.
Anyone who hasn't asked a question
This
yet?
lady here.
Okay, right there.
We just spent the last 5 years basically in lockdown in our country, right? And we need to relate that. Lucy spent how many years in lockdown? And not having the right medical care, not having the right to be with her family. I was hospitalized for quite some time. I barely made it through. And going through that traumatic myself for just that many years, and relating it to Lucy for how many years, and not
48
having-
years for
Yeah,
Lucy.
Exactly, and not having the care, not having the needs, not having her family. It just about drove me crazy that I couldn't see my family. It drove me crazy that I wasn't allowed a toothbrush.
You know,
or a
one thing I
haircut.
do, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know time is going. One thing I do, I talk about it all the time. I have a dog, I go for walks with him. If I meet other people, I talk about do not take your kids to zoos. Don't go dog sledding, don't go to zoos. I talk about it all the time. And that's, you know, we as people that are here, individuals, talk about it with people. Tell them, you just saw the truth on screen, talk about it. Tell people what you have learned, and hopefully they will continue to spread the message. That's what each one of us can do.
Thank you.
Can I ask one thing? We're all sort of focused on the altruism nature of this argument, but I thought, they're not listening, and sometimes you gotta play dirty, and I thought, well, why not take the approach they did in New York that was identified in this documentary, and take the legal approach? Because I remember there was a story, I don't have details here, but with the horses there a few years back before COVID, where a guy, I think he got heavily fined, there was talk of him doing jail time even, over horses. And there was stories about the dogs, some dogs that were abused and stuff too, and that guy was fined as well. So maybe I'm just speculating here, and it's just an idea, so I'll formulate it right now in my mind. But you go to New York and fly there, if someone's got complaints or whatever, consult people that have their legal argument there, and maybe get ideas from them how to pursue.
We have animal justice here in Canada, and so they are an extraordinary organization that try to change the laws with animals here in Canada. So be active with them, they need help. And they're also working with the federal government to change the laws. So we have that here, and they need to be supported.
One last comment, then I'll be quiet. The idea I have is if you could show that she's suffering and consult many of, if you can do this online and through, like we did the consultation with the judge over COVID, you don't may have to transport those people here, but you can consult their expertise and show numerous people, if it's a consensus around the world that Lucy's suffering, or in all probability she is, then either you have to let her go, or heaven forbid, euthanize her if they insist that she can't be transported.
We have a document that we put together from world-renowned experts. So when we do our public awareness events, it's called The Experts Agree. And one of them is on stage right now, Lester, but also veterinarians, world-renowned elephant conservationists, etc. And we have tried to distribute that as best we can. But yeah, we continue to seek out more voices for Lucy. Back to the court thing that you mentioned, Lonnie, an old co-worker of mine when I used to work in healthcare. There have been 2 court cases for Lucy. They were filed, one in, and Debbie might be able to correct me on this, I believe 2010, and the other 2016, is that correct? One was directed at the province of Alberta for granting a zoo license to the zoo who was in violation of zoo standards, and the other one was against the city of Edmonton. And the premise of that was that Lucy was suffering from privation, correct? Both of those cases were denied, and then they were taken to the Supreme Court of Alberta. And what ended up happening, which they talked about with the Non-Human Rights Project, is that two justices, well, the Court of Appeals had 3 justices, and on one of the cases, one of the justices gave a dissenting opinion, which was a big deal in Canadian animal law, but unfortunately the other 2 sided with the zoo. So the case was lost, and the same thing happened with the second case. One justice spoke out with a dissenting opinion, and the other 2 sided with the zoo. Sadly, the judge in charge was the same judge for both, right? Yeah, it was the same, one of those justices was the same in both cases. But the bottom line was that the groups that brought the lawsuit didn't have legal standing. And that's part of the problem. Animals are considered the same thing as property, and so they don't have personhood, which is why the Non-Human Rights Project is trying to get elephants declared persons. Elephants specifically because of their intelligence, but of course, you know, we all know and love animals, and they should all be given that same right.
And then, sorry, I just want to say one more thing, and then we've got to close. The town council are the ones that decide whether Lucy's going to stay or Lucy's going to go, right? They're voted in, everyone. They're voted in. Your mayor's voted in. Every member of your town council's voted in. Get active. Tell them, if you want my vote, Lucy goes to sanctuary.
They'll be door knocking this fall, because a new election is coming. So yeah, that's what I did with my city councillor, and I've been a thorn in his side for the last 8 years. No wonder he's actually, no wonder he's actually stepping down off of council. He's had enough.
Be a thorn in their side. Lucy needs to be free. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming.